What's up, YouTube, and welcome in, Bears fans. This is episode 2 of The Lindemann Show. I'm your host, Cody Lindemann, and Bears fans, we are so close, so close to the end of this 2024 season. Since we last talked in episode number 1, the Chicago Bears have lost 2 games, of course, losing to the Detroit Lions, as I talked about in that first episode. That was my prediction. They lost 17-34 on December 22nd. The Bears scored in the first half. That was a nice change of pace. Scored 14 points in the first half. Of course, only went on to score 3 points in the second half. Caleb Williams had a pretty nice day, throwing for over 300 yards. Keenan Allen went off. Great connection between him and Caleb Williams in that game. And then, of course, in the second game the Bears have played since we last talked, lost last night to the Seahawks by a score of 6-3, a touchdownless NFL game. Caleb Williams looked pretty bad. That might be his worst game as a Bear. Ended up on the ground a lot. Seahawks defensive line just ran through the Bears' offensive line all game long. Bears looked pretty bad. That might be the worst game they played all year long. Caleb Williams had an opportunity to break the Bears' single season passing record via yards. If he had thrown to stay on pace, he had to throw for about 284 yards, I believe. The exact number does not matter anymore because he threw for 122 last night, and there's no way Caleb Williams is going to throw for over 400 yards against the Packers in the last game of the season. So that record is pretty much out the window. It's amazing that Caleb Williams was even close. The Bears' offense has been abysmal all year long. And the fact that Caleb Williams is even close to the Bears' single-season passing record points to the fact that the Bears have never had a real passer as a quarterback, and the fact that Caleb Williams might actually be good despite the Bears losing 10 games in a row. We're going to have a little talk about Ryan Poles, of course, later on in this episode. And we're going to talk about the Bears possibly hitting rock bottom. But before we have a conversation about that, I want to remind everyone to like, subscribe. Please leave comments down in the comment section. Anything you want to say about the show. If there's anything you want me to talk about more. Any comments, concerns, anything you might want to hear about on the show, please leave a comment. I want to try to interact with commenters down in the comment section and possibly address some questions and concerns on upcoming shows. So really appreciate leaving those comments, and also really appreciate when you like and subscribe to the podcast, to the show, as we continue to roll out Bears content for these final couple of games the Bears got, and then into the offseason here as the Bears will enter a head coaching search. But once again, want to circle back and address if the Bears have hit rock bottom. I've been hearing this question asked for a lot of the Bears season. Obviously, when you have a 10-game losing streak, the question is going to be how bad can it get? How bad can it get? And I heard this back when Eberflus was still the coach. After the Bears blew all those division games, is this rock bottom? And I've always had the same answer. The answer has always been no, it can't be rock bottom because there's games left in the Bears season. And that might sound a little bit like a joke, but it's not satire. I was being serious. I'm like, no, there's no way that this is rock bottom because the Bears have games left to lose. Like, people could get injured. Caleb could get injured. That would be rock bottom. The Bears can get shut out. The Bears can give up 50 points. Like, all those things are going to be even worse, right? So every time anyone's asked that question, or I've heard that question, or I've had that thought, I always think, no, it can get worse because there are games left. And it has, right? The losing streak has extended to 10. There is no reason to believe that it won't extend to 11. Except maybe a little glimmer of hope that the Packers will be solidified in their playoff standing and they rest starters. and then maybe the Bears have an opportunity to beat the Packers in Week 18. Although I don't foresee that happening. I don't think that little glimmer of hope is a big enough glimmer to really have any sort of real hope that the Bears are gonna beat the Green Bay Packers in Week 18. Um, but it does kind of raise the question that the Bears are getting closer to the end of the season. They have only one game left. So my defense that of course it can't be rock bottom because there are 0 games left is running out. Um, the time's running short on that argument. There will only be one game left soon enough, and then 0 games left, and then I'll have to ask the question: is this rock bottom for the Chicago Bears? And my answer can't be yes. It can't be yes when it looks like they have a capable quarterback. Yes, Caleb Williams has had bad games. He had a bad game last night. He's had some throughout the year. Um, he's held onto the ball too long, and that's still a problem. Um, Last night I thought he did a little bit better job of getting rid of some balls, just throwing them out of bounds instead of taking a sack. And I did like to see that. I thought maybe that's a slight improvement. And it's hard to say it's slight improvement on a night where he gets sacked. I believe it's 7 times, but it doesn't matter. He got sacked so many times last night, and it's hard to say, oh, he's doing a great job of not taking sacks when he gets sacked that many times. But I feel like he should have got sacked more, and he had an opportunity to do what he does, where he tries to play hero ball, and he holds onto the ball too long, and he scrambles around and runs around, and takes a sack. And he did that last night. I'm not going to say that that did not happen at all against the Seahawks, and that he didn't hold on to the ball too long. But what I'm saying is that there are times where he felt the pressure, he tried to make a play, and then he said, "Hey, the play's not here," and threw it away. And obviously that's such a bad glimmer of hope. It's not like, hey, that's a highlight. Um, Better decision making is always a good thing in quarterbacks, but it's hard to be like, oh, look at the highlight of this offense. Caleb Williams didn't take 10 sacks because he threw the ball away 3 times, right? But it just does signal a little bit better decision making from him. It signals improvement, which I think is the big thing for me. When you have a quarterback who struggled with the same thing all year, and then in the second to last game of the season, it's like, oh, look, he kind of fixed a little bit of a problem, or sort of did, handled that better. So hopefully that's something that he continues to improve on moving forward, and the Bears continue to do better there. Last night, Caleb Williams failed to have that fourth quarter kind of clutch drive. He did make a really nice play on a pass to DJ Moore with pressure in his face, which is pretty much true for any pass he threw last night. If he threw a pass, there was pressure in his face. But did make a really nice play on fourth down to continue the drive. Had a nice completion to Rome Odunze, and the Bears just couldn't complete it. The Bears continue to have the same problems with timeouts and confusion, personnel confusion. That they had with Matt Eberflus here, and it's hard to have good things to say when they continue to have the same problems, and you think firing Eberflus would address the problem, and it didn't. But just want to continue talking about Caleb Williams, not get too far derailed there, talking, reliving and rehashing all the bad decisions that coaching has made. We'll probably talk a little bit more about that in the second half of the show as we talk about Ryan Poles. But just want to continue on Caleb Williams' conversation right now. It just didn't look like he had any connection with the receivers last night. Did connect with DJ Moore a few times, but most of those connections were screens behind the line, and just kind of trying to get DJ Moore into space. Succeeding on a couple of occasions there, but for the most part, Caleb not throwing downfield, and not having time to either. There was just no time last night. The left side of the offensive line with Jake Curran and Larry Borum just got ran through all night long. There was little resistance most plays, and Caleb really struggled. It's hard to evaluate his his performance on that when he has pressure in his face all night, and when his O line has been so bad, and they were really bad last night. But Caleb did miss a couple throws downfield, missed a couple of guys that looked wide open. Also, a couple drops. Of course, been a discussion all year long. Caleb not being helped out by his receivers, which was one of the reasons that he was coming into such a good situation. He had 3 really good receivers, even though one was going to be a rookie, that he could rely on to make catches, and he could throw to a very established tight end in Cole Kmet, who is very sure-handed. That's still true. I think he's only added 1 drop on the year, but that's because he doesn't get the ball thrown to him. Bears offensive coordinators have completely forgotten that Cole Kmet is not a 6th offensive lineman and just continue to not throw him the ball, even though he is a very good tight end. I'm not going to say top tier. He's not like, Travis Kelce or George Kittle, but he's, I would say, better than mediocre. I'd say he's in the top half of the league in tight ends, and it's hard. It would be hard to know that. As anyone who doesn't know the Bears and hasn't seen Cole Kmet play before the season, it would be really hard to know that he's a solid tight end because the Bears just don't throw to him, and he can catch. He's not just a blocking tight end. He blocks well, but he can go out, run routes, bring down the ball. He can run over people, get extra yards. He's done it his entire career, and then this year they just continue to not throw to him, continue to not use Kmet as a weapon. It's been confusing all year and frustrating when you see the Bears' offensive struggles continue, and they have just completely discounted a weapon and what should be a safety blanket for a young quarterback. They're a big tight end who can make plays for him, but that's obviously not going to change. It hasn't changed all year. Yes, Kmet's had a couple of touchdown catches, but that's about all he really has. Caleb Williams did throw a touchdown pass last night, but you won't see it in the stat book as it got called back for a Jake Curran holding. So that score didn't count. The Bears ended up kicking a field goal on that drive, I believe, and it was their only points of the night. And it's really upsetting because the touchdown pass was really nice. Williams was rolling out to his left, I believe, and as he does so often, jumped in the air and threw a seed to Rome Odunze in the back of the end zone. Really nice ball. Had a lot of heat on it to get it there and make sure that window didn't close, but it was all for naught, as so much of the Bears' season has been. Caleb Williams, as I said, didn't have that drive at the end of the game, which Bears talking about, I think. It's something that he's done really well. Pretty much the entire time he's been on the Bears team. I know I addressed it a little bit earlier, but he didn't have that drive. He had a 4th down conversion, but so often he's led the Bears on drives that gets them into scoring position or gets them into field goal range or gets them kind of what they need in those close games. And the Bears got close last night. I think they got to the 40-yard line, and then they had a couple plays to run where they could have just gotten a few more yards. It made it a easier field goal attempt for Santos, but the Bears threw 2 incompletions, I believe, or they didn't gain enough yardage to make it a reasonable try for Santos, which is kind of crazy to think about because it would have been a 57-yard attempt, and that the fact that you don't have a field goal kicker who can even attempt a 57-yarder, which is really kind of what bothered me, is not that he tried it and missed it. 57-yarder is no give me. I get that. I think a lot more kickers can hit it now than probably 5 years ago, as field goal range has just kind of exploded in these past few years. But you should be able to at least try a 57-yard field goal to tie the game. I think Thomas Brown said in his post-game press conference that they're going for the win, and they want to win the game. But I think you just got to give your field goal kicker a chance, and you just got to give your team a chance to fight for another day. I just can't believe how bad it's been. I'm at a loss for words at times when I just try to consider how dysfunctional it's been, um, all the gaffes, all the errors, all the decision making. It just makes no sense to me, and I can't. It's hard to believe that this isn't rock bottom, but it can't be. Just to wrap up the beginning of the segment before it kind of turned into a Caleb Williams segment about what he has done well throughout the games and where he kind of missed last night and what was missing from his game. But it can't be rock bottom because there's at least a game left. And then the offseason. The Bears can make it worse in the offseason. I know there's not games happening, but they can certainly make it worse with the Ryan Poles situation and what they choose to do at ownership. But before we get into that conversation, just want to remind you to like, subscribe. Please leave a comment down in the comment section. Once again, I'm going to say it a lot here as in these early episodes on the podcast. I love it when you leave comments. It gives me an opportunity to see what you guys think about the show, what you think I should be talking about, any questions for me to address on the next show, and if there's anything you guys want to see change with the show, if there's anything else you guys want to add, get rid of, anything like that, any topics or points of discussion you disagree with, any of my thoughts you disagree with, would love to hear them down in the comment section, interact with you guys down in the comment section, and hopefully maybe even bring some of those comments onto the show. So appreciate anyone who can like and subscribe, and also really appreciate comments on the video, and anyone watching. I really appreciate your views and your time. But gonna move on now to conversation about Ryan Poles. I know we talked about it a little bit on the last episode, and talked about his job, and it seemed like it was maybe in question. And after last night's sell the team chance and the national audience just embarrassment, I had the game on a little bit as they went to the post-game show. And there is a small contingent of Bears fans that gathered in the stands right in front of the post-game show set there on the sidelines on Soldier Field, and chanted "Sell the team" for the first couple minutes of the post-game show, and we're almost made it hard to hear the host. They were so loud, standing there chanting "Sell the team." The Bears were driving in the fourth quarter. "Sell the team" chants came up. Shots on the broadcast, on the television broadcast, had fans with bags over their heads and the words "Make it stop" written down. Bears fans actively like booing and thumbs downing the Bears when the camera panned to them. During the game was still happening. The Bears were down by 3. And people were still like booing the Bears. People were still dissatisfied. And it just speaks to how bad this team's been. This is Ryan Poles' second 10-game losing streak in his 3-year tenure, which is just it's hard to imagine, and it's hard to say that and to think that any GM could keep his job. It's really hard to believe that Ryan Poles could endure 2 10-game losing streaks and keep his job. I understand that most GMs get 2 coaches, and whether or not that's a good policy, whether or not you agree with it, it is just a fact that most of the time, GMs have 2 coaches. They get 2 coaching hires, and they get 2 rounds of a head coach, and they can try to make it work from there. My question is, this has been so bad. Not rock bottom, as I said earlier in the podcast, but it's been so bad. Is it possible that the Bears move on from Ryan Poles? Is it possible that it's been so bad that he only gets 1 head coaching hire? Is it possible that it's been so bad that Ryan Poles doesn't get the opportunity that most GMs do to have 2 coaches? I think it's possible. And it's hard to not, at this point, after you fire your offensive coordinator, after you fire your GM, when your interim head coach, or not GM, sorry, after you fire your head coach, and your interim head coach cannot make anything better on the field, all the lines start to go back to Ryan Poles. I know when they fired Matt Eberflus, Kevin Warren was very clear. I know I mentioned it last week. Very clear. Ryan Poles will be heading up the head coaching search. But listen, things can change in 5 weeks. Things can change faster than that in the NFL. And to have a team that has just looked so bad on the field a week in and week out, the question has to be asked. Do you think Ryan Poles can make it better? One of the things I think when the coach gets fired and the players still don't play better, I think what has to be said is that the roster's bad. The roster is not good enough. The players that are on the field that the GM has signed and put into place have not been good enough. And the roster is just not talented enough to play high-quality football. Listen, I know coaching is important. I'm not here to underplay coaching. But when you sit there all season and you go, coaching is the reason we're losing. Coaching loses us late games. You know, coaching in late games, circumstances, scenarios, whatever you want to say, timeouts, decision making, when to go for it, unclear personnel issues like last night. When you say coaching is the reason we're losing, and then your roster doesn't play any better with a different coach, maybe the roster's bad. Maybe the roster is just not talented enough. And I think that's what you're looking at with the Bears. The roster has really, it looks like they're talented, which is I think has been the confusing part, is that it looks like they're talented. So the answer has to be coaching, and it hasn't been. There's so many things that Ryan Poles can be faulted for. The offensive line, you probably need to find 4 new offensive linemen. You can find some in free agency, find some in the draft, but you need 4 new offensive linemen. Darnell Wright's the only person who I think has a spot locked up for next year. Braxton Jones has been serviceable as a 5th-round pick. I just don't think he's protecting Caleb Williams' backside enough, and especially as a quarterback who wants to be in the pocket and who holds on to the ball probably too long, having his blind side covered with a solid tackle is going to be best for him. Bears have obviously let their quarterback be sacked the most times this year. The offensive line is a mess. Tevin Jenkins is a good offensive lineman when he's healthy. I think he's just shown that he can't be relied upon to be healthy throughout a season. So I don't think he's going to be re-signed unless he's maybe a depth piece. And I don't know if you want to keep him as a depth piece that normally gets injured. It seems kind of counterintuitive and counterproductive. But the roster just looks bad. And this is the time for Kevin Warren. Once again, when Matt Eberflus got fired in the middle of the season, I said, this is time for Kevin Warren to be serious, to say, hey, things have changed here. There's a new president. There's a higher standard. Things have changed now in the Bears organization, and you need to be better. And he had an opportunity to do that. And I think with George McCaskey, himself, and Ryan Poles, they made the decision to say, hey, we have a higher standard. Things need to change. And Matt Eberflus got fired. The team hasn't played any better, which is disappointing. I thought things would be better. I think everyone in that room thought things would be better. Bears continue to lose. That's besides the point. The point is that Kevin Warren said things need to change. There's a higher standard. This is no longer acceptable as in the Chicago Bears organization. And I think he has an opportunity to say that again, to say, hey, losing 10 games over twice over the course, or having 10-game losing streaks, which is even worse, over a 3-game span, is not acceptable. And moving on from Ryan Poles, I think saying we're gonna line up GMs and head coaches, and we're gonna do timing right as an organization, is something he has an opportunity to do. And there's so many things that are just wrong here. It's so hard to say, oh, if he just does this, he'll make the right decision, or if he just does this, he'll make the right decision. There are so many things that have gone wrong with the Bears this year and organization wide. But it starts at the top, right? It starts with the person who puts the team on the field. So it's also imperative that Kevin Warren says, hey, things have changed, and we're not going to let a lame duck GM with 1 year left on his contract decide the future head coach of the Bears. If you want to keep him and extend him, I think that's probably the wrong decision, but at least it's one that's defendable. If you extend Ryan Poles and you say, hey, he's our GM, we have faith in him, we have faith in what he's done so far with the Bears franchise, which, don't get me wrong, I think he's made a lot of moves in a short amount of time. I think he's made a lot of change, and he has positive parts to his resume. Getting Caleb Williams, making that trade is obviously the top one, but he has a lot of negatives, and they only continue to grow as the Bears continue to lose games here in 2024, heading into an offseason with what will likely be an 11-game losing streak. I digress. If you want to keep him and extend him, that is at least defendable. At least it makes some football sense. And you can say, hey, he's going to have an opportunity to run it back with his second head coach, and that's going to be the decision that the Bears make. He's our, football guy. We trust him to build a roster that can compete for a championship. Whatever you want to say at the news conference is really not important. But at least the decision is defendable. I don't think it's the right one. I think it's the one the Bears will choose, however. But it's a decision that can be made. The second option is what I've been talking about. You fire him, you line up the GM and the head coach. You allow, and the thing that firing Poles does also allows the head coach to have a little bit more control over the roster, which is something that if you're bringing in the head coach that you plan to, one that's going to be good for the next 10, 20 years with the Bears and is going to win you championship games and make Caleb Williams the quarterback that you think he can be, the head coach probably needs a little bit more roster control, and that would allow for that to happen. You don't have to defend Ryan Poles to any coaching hires you want to make. If they're like, hey, that's not the guy I want, you don't have to defend that. You can find a head coach and GM who work really well together, who want to work together, who are excited to work together and understand each other better. What you can't do is have a coaching search and have Ryan Poles lead it with only 1 year left of his contract, where he is fighting for his job all year long. And I think that leads to some bad decisions because you're trying to save your job, so you'll do anything to save your job. And I think it hurts the organization in the long run. And then you have Ryan Poles, who probably hired the guy who's going to be leading the locker room for the next 4 to 5 years, and he could be fired the next year. That's just not acceptable way to run a organization, any organization, but especially a football team. And I hope the Bears have the sensibility to say, we're not going to do that. It seems like something the Bears might do with the dysfunction we've seen so far this season and over the decades of the way that they've run this organization. It seems like the Bears might possibly decide, hey, we are going to run it back with the same GM and not change anything, not change his contract status, and let him just run out this final year and see what happens. And it's just not an acceptable way to run a franchise. With that being said, one game left for the Chicago Bears. We're so close to the offseason, to things about the GM getting answered, to things about head coaching search getting answered, the head coaching search taking all the headlines away from how bad the play on the field has been, and hopefully the Bears on their way to having a better season in 2025. Please like, subscribe, comment, join the community, join the journey. Thank you for watching episode 2, and thank you for sticking with me and the Chicago Bears as I make off-season content and round out the season here on The Lindemann Show. Until next time, this has been The Lindemann Show.